As a sales executive, when was the time when you realized that Signals is the way to go?
There's a lot of spammy worst practices that are getting popular or infiltrating LinkedIn and making it a noisier place than it was even a year or two ago. But still, the fact that when you send an email or you connect with somebody, they're going to go to your profile, they're going to see your experience, they're going to see the content you write, they're going to see how you position yourself. So you have this landing page that's way more powerful than cold email.
What is your process of designing a signal-based go-to-market engine from scratch?
What we identified as Signals was one of their key competitors had a CEO who was very well respected in the theory of a lot of building software and team management. So all of his content was very structured, and there were specific keywords and frameworks that he would talk about. If you haven't been spending time in the last year getting really clear about what data you need and to really harness signal intelligence with your outreach and your go-to-market segmentation, you're already really behind.
Welcome everyone to My First Signal, the only show where we invite seasoned revenue drivers to discover the practical side of designing a signal-based go-to-market engine for the first time under 30 minutes. My name is Georgi. I'm the CEO of Signal-Based. Now let's get practical. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a banger today. On the other side of the screen, we have a person that I met completely randomly through one of my outreach messages. And then we clicked so much when it comes to the topic of social listening and signals and go-to-market as a whole. So, Brady, thanks a lot for coming, man. I do appreciate you having the time to chat today.
Thanks, Georgi. Happy to be here.
Yes, sir. Shall we start with something simple, or at least a fan favorite, when it comes to the topic of what is your biggest hot take for the go-to-market landscape?
Oh, man. I think the biggest hot take is maybe combined. One would be, I feel like for larger teams, especially, if you haven't been spending time in the last year getting really clear about what data you need in order to be more AI native, to be more automated, and to really harness signal intelligence with your outreach and your go-to-market segmentation, you're already really behind. You got to start doing that right now. First initiative in 2026, because the second hot take is that I think as more and more tools come out, it'll be even harder to harness all these really great point solutions like a signal base on top of a larger orchestration platform like a Clay if you really don't understand the first principles of how am I building these accounts? What is the data I need to build effective account lists and the messaging and pain qualified segmentation in order to reach the right person with the right message at the right time? All that stuff is not going to be solved by a new tool. So start there and then go play with a lot of the really great new solutions and start now.
I love that. As a sales exec, by the way, when was the time when you realized that Signals is the way to go? Because I feel like I'm talking to a lot of teams so far in-house, right? We're talking about having more than one SDR, let's say 5 to 15. People still do a lot of spraying and praying. So I'm wondering what pushed you to adopt this methodology and how should other teams go there?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. The very first time we were doing signals, especially from a social listening standpoint, was way back when it's all relative, but when I started Interseller, which is like my first 0 to 1 role, we were selling basically like a sales engagement platform, but to agency recruiting. So what we had was a Chrome extension, this was like 2018, that would pull profile information, run it through people data labs to get their emails. And then we had a basic email sequencer and a lightweight sort of CRM. Okay, so we had a very clear ICP, and our signals, if you would, were that they were agency recruiters that had less than 10 people and were bad at LinkedIn and or email. And so one of the things that we started doing towards the end of my time there, like maybe 2020, is we were manually going through thought leadership posts and commenting. We were doing like comment engagement super early before there was any sophistication or any real awareness around that as a strategy. And then we were also tabbing out every like or comment, matching whether they were an ICP fit, and then sending. We weren't actually engaging with them on LinkedIn very much. We would just send them into a interseller email campaign referencing the post that they commented on, their comment. If they just liked it, we would have some lateral question related to it. And that was the first time I got like signal pilled, if you will, on here, because we were getting 18 to 20% reply rates on email in 2019, 2020. And I never really found a way to orchestrate this in a more systematic way until maybe the last year or two on LinkedIn. But yeah, it's a great time to want to be doing this. Let's put it that way.
And how, because currently you're also helping in-house teams with building that initial motion. What is the first thing that you tell them when it comes to, hey, you guys need to stop spraying and praying, start leveraging signals, etc., etc. Like, where does the whole aha moment comes from?
Yeah, usually it comes from one of maybe two places. One, especially for me, so my major focus is LinkedIn as the initial top of funnel. I think it's the best channel for pure tofu because it's very authentic. Look, there's a lot of spammy worst practices that are getting popular or infiltrating LinkedIn and making it a noisier place than it was even a year or two ago. But still, the fact that when you send an email or you connect with somebody, they're going to go to your profile. They're going to see your experience. They're going to see the content you write. They're going to see how you position yourself. So you have this landing page that's way more powerful than cold email, where you often have to have a burner domain. It's a fake sender or inbox, and all of that it's just fundamentally different. So from a sales perspective, it's unbeaten for the trust building. And then the way that you engage is much more conversational when you're doing an asynchronous conversation over a messaging platform as opposed to email. So email, you got to treat more like marketing, and you're either looking for intent signals that can show that they're ideally as far down in the buying intent funnel as possible, so that you can hit them with an email that is actionable, related to where you think they should be in the buyer's journey, or is just purely informational demand creation, and you're not really able to have a conversation there or try to drive them to a meeting so quickly. So teams, I either come across people because they're referred to me by somebody who's had me do the stuff for them on LinkedIn, or they've seen me do something on LinkedIn, or they're responding to me reaching out to them. So it's very clear that, hey, if you're talking to me, you're probably interested in this channel, either making it better because you're already doing it poorly, or you're not doing it at all and you believe that there's something here.
Gotcha. Yeah. So just your qualification is rock solid in the sense of hyper relevancy, right? Ultimately, that's pretty much it. Awesome stuff. Okay, let's move into the meat of the show, which is building signal-based engines. Steven, what is your process of designing a signal-based go-to-market engine from scratch?
Okay, cool. Especially from the social listening spot, I'll talk to first and foremost. So there's 5 pillars for B that I'm looking for. It's not either. We're starting with, does the client have their own consistent audience on LinkedIn? Are they writing a lot of content that gets a lot of engagement? Most of the time, no, it's not really the case. But if there's anything, then there's definitely some strong signal there, right? Anybody who is in your ICP who is commenting on or engaging with the things you write about should be getting some consistent messaging from you as a company, right? So we start there. Then we move to what most people think is the biggest stuff, the next two, which is competitors, thought leadership, et cetera, or their executives, and or thought leaders. So these are probably the 2 biggest surface areas. And one of the things I like most about the competitor one, when it's possible, I'll give you a hard example. There was a company I was working with earlier last year that had never had any success in 5 years doing cold outreach. They sell to VPs of engineering too, typically not very responsive to this, and they're selling the DevOps platform. So really, really specific. But the thing is, their founders are the buyers. So they've got founder market fit, which is really strong. So LinkedIn worked really well because the connection requests were super high. It's coming from a guy who's got a background as eng leader. And what we identified as signals was one of their key competitors had a CEO who was very well respected in the theory of a lot of building software and team management. So all of his content was very structured, and there were specific keywords and frameworks that he would talk about. So we would not only scrape all of his engagement, but we would mine the very specific posts that talked about keyword X or Y. And so when all of that flows into Clay, then what we can do is we can say, if the lead filters out and they engage with topic A, then it formulaically writes the first message that is referencing topic A and the problem related question, right? Et cetera, for B, C, and D. And so not only were we getting a lot of great network growth, we were getting reply rates in the 25, 30% on some of these campaigns. Again, reaching out to engineering leaders on LinkedIn, which most people would say is a fool's errand. So that's like the core. And then after that, you can add maybe if there's adjacent software that your client or your customer would need, like if I'm reaching out to people who want to do outbound better on LinkedIn, they maybe are looking at something like Trigify or Signalbase or Clay. So that's a signal that we should reach out. And then lastly would be keywords. So starting with those are like the 5 main signal areas that you can scrape for with various tools on LinkedIn. And you really don't need much more than that.
Yeah, awesome. I would just add a sixth one, which is certifications, because there are a lot of
personal profile info.
Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of certifications in particular areas, right? DevOps, go-to-market, whatever. So if someone finishes a relevant certification, let's say that you're a SEO software, right? And someone completes a SEO certification about strategy or something like this. Awesome. Pitch them already like the solution because they are aware of the fact that they will need a solution later down the line. Great stuff. What would you say were the mistakes? Oh, sorry, I might be rushing it. Are they more layers towards your system?
Yes, I would say the layer after that is how are you when you have this plan, how do you systematically get the data, and then what are you doing with it, right? So there's several tools I think that can do a lot of the social scraping and listening. I happen to really like Trigify for this, mostly because they've done one thing really well around profile engagement monitoring, and it just has a webhook that flows into Clay really well, and it does the thing really well. But they've also built a lot more powerful just general search and listening across YouTube and Reddit and X now, which is pretty helpful. And it's got some nice workflow automation within the platform that's pretty cool. But yeah, other than the hard part, which is who am I monitoring for and why, Trigify, flow that into Clay, build your workbook so that the data comes in, you enrich it at the person and company level that you need. You then score them or segment them on the type of persona they are. You match it up to the content and context specific messages that you can send. And then you pipe that into HeyReach and or Instantly or Smart Lead. That's the system. I'll share with you that you can put in the show notes or something.
Awesome.
A playbook for all of this that is written up real nice.
Yeah. One last thing, actually, that I don't think I heard is webinar participation. That's an evergreen play that you can also run, right? Or what is your take on that one?
I used to do a pretty hacky way of doing this where I don't know if it's more of a funny story because it's not very useful anymore, but a lot of people used to use Zoom and still use Zoom for webinars, but they weren't using the webinar version like a couple of years ago until that became more common. And long story short, you used to be able to join, right? And there'd be hundreds of people in there. And it would show you all of the users when they would comment and stuff. You used to be able to export the chat as a text field or like a text file.
Wait.
And it would give you like everybody's username who had engaged in the chat. And sometimes it would say like the whole list. So I would go to these, just get on there, leave it on and not do anything. And then at the end, export the text file and then turn the text file into a CSV and have a lead list.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I know that there's some good alpha there, but I'm probably not the best person. I should be learning from you of how to refresh the strategy maybe.
Do you know from my previous venture that what you can simply do if there is a relevant webinar and you use Lemless, you can press on attend on any event, actually, not only webinar, but also the in-person event that take place. because people want to have extra distribution, right? And if you're on the other side, it makes a lot of sense to use this as a touch point. So if someone that you're constantly outreaching to, right, and at some point you don't want to gun the large shot that you have, you just invite them as a touch point. Sometimes it works quite nicely. It worked for me and for the conference that I was trying to build. At some point, they don't want to hear more about you. So at some point, after seeing so many posts from other people that are going to this event, and if you invite them, they might say politely yes, but not by talking to you.
Sure.
So this is on the side of the creator. On the side of the person who leveraged this, what you simply can do is press on attend, then click on all the profiles with lemless, and then you can qualify people from there, and there you have it. Because I'm personally using lemless for LinkedIn outreach at the moment. And yeah,
that's pretty clever.
That's the 6th or 7th evergreen tactic that you can run. Honestly, just by this, I think 95% of your pipeline can be generated if you play it accordingly with hyper relevance. But of course, you do need to be able to pull fresh accounts not only by that side, because it's not so repeatable, right? And this is where signal base comes in, but I wouldn't talk about that one. What I'm curious about, because time is flying and we're across the 50% mark, is your biggest mistake when designing such agents?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem, to be honest, again, starts with the product market fit level stuff, right? And it's really at the account level. And have we really figured out who this is valuable for, and what do we need to find in order to know that we're talking to someone who has that? That's the hardest thing, to be honest. So I gave you that example with the client with the DevOps tool. A+ level client, right? Like they know exactly the type of person that they need to reach out to. And not only that, they know that their ideal customer needs to have been further along in the education journey by the time they talk to them. Because if they get on the phone and they're like, oh, do you know about this principle or this framework? And they don't, they're not a buyer, because that's how they use the software correctly. I think when I work with clients, or even I'm doing this myself for my own outreach, that's where it is. Like 80% of the time, honestly, needs to be spent getting really dialed into, why am I reaching out to this specific person right now? And what is the what's the just valuable thing I could share? It doesn't need to be, what do I need them to do for me? But what can I deliver in 80 words or less that's super relevant to this person right now? Then everything else is just great. How do I orchestrate that? How do I do that manually? Or then how do I start scaling it? Otherwise, I think Jordan Crawford has a funny way of saying, it's like AI SDRs are like a legless robot on a horse. Like nobody goes anywhere, but it shits everywhere on the way. That's where a lot of people start with the wrong starting point, is let's just get a bunch of signals and a lot of scale around something that fundamentally is just not going to resonate.
Yeah. What's your take on AI SDRs at the moment? As someone who is trying new stuff continuously, some people say it's getting there, some people are not. Some people are still thinking about the fact that they can ultimately substitute their A's and BDRs and whatnot, like as an entire team swapping exercise. So yeah, I want to hear this from someone who actually is in the sales side of things.
I would say we are close, meaning there are teams that are doing this and will do it better very soon. I think the leading example is if you read Jason Lemkin at SaaStr. For the last 6 months, he's probably been the most agent-pilled founder writing on LinkedIn. And his team has gone from, I think he said 8 on the sales side to 1.5. And he just had a great podcast with Lenny Rachitsky and talked about their AI SDR closed a 6-figure and a high 5-figure deal with no human intervention. Now, it's a sponsorship product. Maybe that's not a great example. But what it's showing you is that if you spend a lot of time like they have and a lot of iteration to build something out like that's very custom, it can work. Now, AI SDR in a box without millions of blog posts over 10 years and 60 to 100 hours of agent building and iteration that led to this great use case that SaaStr talks about. We're nowhere near that. The middle ground, though, I had a client who their biggest problem in working together is we were setting up 50 to 80 replies on LinkedIn for them and email every month. And the three founders just didn't have enough time to respond to them quickly. So one of the founders, one of those client founders, built a really complicated N8N solution to build a custom reply bot for him using HeyReach's API. And he would get the message, it would go through an LLM, tell him whether it should be replied or not, give him some context, and he'd get a Slack notification saying, hey, this person just replied. Here is the message I think we should send. Human in the loop oversees it. That I think we'll see a lot more of. I don't think a vendor is going to be able to build something like that's totally out of the box, but a lot more people can build those things themselves now.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Do you think social listening will become as a whole, because it is a tactic, right? It's not a viable strategy. Do you think that is going to get even more saturated as it is?
Yeah.
Or what's the future of it?
100%. The sad thing is what you're seeing happen from all of this is all this great signal intelligence from social listening leads to shitty messaging of, hey, I saw that you commented on Georgie's posts about waste of time. All the stuff that you just did before that, complete waste of time. So sadly, I think the first principle stuff about what makes good authentic outreach and what is compelling relationship building when you're doing this stuff, because let's be honest, most of the selling is really demand creation, right? You're building awareness of the brand. You're trying to build awareness of you, the seller. You're trying to understand, are they interested in this? If you don't have any intent signals or what they are, but nobody really knows until you start talking to them, right? We want conversations.
For sure.
So if you're always optimizing for conversations lead to meetings and meetings lead to deals, right? So whatever tactic gets you to the conversation is going to change, but it's the conversations are fundamental. That's my short take on that.
Great. Two things in there. Number one, I spoke with Spencer in the previous episode, and what he mentioned is that signals is ultimately context for you and your team. Intent is actual behavior that comes from that initial person. So great separation. And for that side,
I think so.
To you. And then the second thing that I wanted to mention is exactly that conversation starting point and expectation management that do needs to come in place whenever you're building such engine, right? Because previously people had these expectations of, hey, we're running outreach in order to generate pipeline. In a sense of very black and white. At the moment, I feel like it should be treated exactly like this. And this is what works for me too. It's a conversation starter, pain point. Your content also helps with building trust, because what you mentioned also in the beginning of the show of, hey, people want to buy from people and you do need that trust is definitely a valuable point. But it's something that I feel like teams should become aware about as well. Because so far they're treating it as black and white. It's the same with ads previously, at least.
Yep. Totally. I think two of the best people writing about this, I think on LinkedIn, both work at the same company, Titan X. Like they sell validation on phone lists essentially, right? So conversations are their lifeblood, and their head of marketing, Evan Dunn, and their new customer success guy, Jerry Hill, who used to work at Connect and Sell and has been in cold calling for a long time. They are writing really great content about how to build a go-to-market motion that has conversations as the North Star of what you're trying to do. And yeah, it's been really great stuff. And I'll leave it at that. Everyone go read that stuff that they're writing and rethink about how much am I actually focusing on more conversations cheaply and efficiently with my outbound.
Totally. One last thing before the last question. Also, if you say something about hot dogs, it's very hard for you to then pull it back to the initial problem that you want to solve. So conversations need to be picked up with something in mind when it comes to how do I tie it back to my business? Because if not, you just talk about, I don't know, LeBron James retiring or something like this.
I think it was Meredith Chandler from Aligned. I think it was her. She had a post like a week ago that went viral talking about, I was on a cold call review and this guy was talking about how he barked like a dog on the...
Yes, I saw that. I saw that.
This kind of shit is getting everywhere too. I get you need attention and you got to disrupt people. But again, so you have their attention and now what? How do you go back to talking about some professional thing you're going to solve? So these gimmicks are crazy.
One last thing that threw me off, and I like this, I might as well bring it into the podcast. What have I seen this week that threw me away when it comes to the whole go-to-market approach? I have seen also this pick up email subject matter. Hey, you've been watching this type of videos just as an attention grabber, and that went crazy viral. I don't know if you have seen it, but it's ridiculous. I'll never have the audacity to send such emails. But
I saw something very audacious. It was like someone had it was like your Pornhub year in review as a subject line, which is I think a lot of people have seen that one. And then another hack I saw that was interesting, but probably not great is instead of cold emailing people, you create like a Google Doc and then you take their email and you invite them to the doc so that Google automatically serves the email to them because it's going through Google notifications.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that probably works in some areas, but will for sure piss off a ton of people, especially in like enterprise. There's no way that would ever fly.
Yeah, exactly. So ladies and gentlemen, please do not do that. Okay, just to wrap it up, because we're out of time, what is an underrated advice that you have for the go-to-market leaders out there? Something that you don't hear every day.
That's a really good question. Go slow and do it yourself. Okay. If you're gonna be the leader and you're gonna tell people to carry a bag and do something, you got to do it first. Okay. And you got to be able to show them that you can do it and it works. And do that manually, right? It's not a tool. It's not another data provider. You need to go figure out, how can I just log into LinkedIn? How can I just search on Google even, or pop into Claude Code? Or how can I just ask for a list and ways to contact people and then go prove that you can do it with good targeting and messaging before you do anything else?
Solid. I love this. It also goes quite well with my mantra: before buying the tool, test the system yourself and then scale it if it works. Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us yet for another valuable episode. If you like everything that Steven said, please make sure to connect with him, check his system in the comments too. So maybe if you want to see some practical insights from me and him, who knows, we might do a webinar together talking about signals as a whole or go to marketplace. So yeah, thanks Steven for coming.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one, everyone.